Karibu sana familia. Welcome back to Echoes from the Motherland, where we don't just ask questions, we build the answers. Today's episode is truly special, not just because of the topic, but because of the guests. First, I'm honored to be joined by my brother, who's walked beside me for nearly 20 years. From the math classroom in Chiromo, from the hostels in Nairobi, to boardrooms here in the USA. And to see his journey has been nothing short of brilliant, truly, truly brilliant. So Douceur is currently the Director of Analytics and Data Science at Blue Health Intelligence with a background in actuarial science and a master's in applied mathematics. He's led high-impact analytical teams in Health Data Analytics Institute, Archway Health, and beyond. He lives at the intersection of AI, healthcare, and human impact. And today he's bringing us a deep dive into how Africa can harness the power of AI, artificial intelligence, to leapfrog outdated systems and build on a future on our terms. And as per usual, we have Kevin, an economist and a critical thinker in every sense. With a master's in economics, he brings the lens that we need, how emerging technologies like AI will shape the African labor market, wealth distribution, and macroeconomic growth. So whether you're in tech, in policy, or just care about where Africa is headed, this conversation is for you. Because the future isn't just digital, it is ours, if we are bold enough to claim it. Douceur Tengu, welcome to Echoes from the Motherland. Question number one, specifically to you, Douceur, is what does Pan Africanism mean to you, brother?
Absolutely. Yeah, and by the way, thank you for that wonderful introduction. Really happy to be here. Yeah, so I really am passionate about this conversation today because it will line up exactly where we believe the world is going and the kind of race that Africa has to join into so that we can go together, or rather, using your term to bring us onto the table so that we can have the same conversation the rest of the globe is having. So, to just answer your question, Pan Africanism, from a general definition point of view, this is a political, cultural, and social movement that pays more emphasis to the shared history and cultural connections among people of African descent, whether on the continent or in the diaspora. To me personally, this means unity. This means empowerment, uh, you know, having a shared commitment to uplifting African people, across the globe. To me, this means self-determination. It's the idea that African people on the continent and across the diaspora are bound not just by shared history, but by a shared future as well, right? So we're not just looking into the past, but we're looking forward as well. It's about recognizing that the solution for Africa and African challenges won't come from imported templates, but this will come from within our own communities. And those communities have to be empowered. So it's not just political for me, but it is personal.
Absolutely. I mean, I love it. I love it. Kevin, you want to chime in a little bit?
For sure. Great. Thank you, Duce, for that. And indeed, I mean, Pan-Africanism it's more than an idea. It's a way of life. It's really a cultural awakening of sorts for Black souls on the planet. And I hope that as we continue with this work, just as others have before us, and I mean, there are many others out there who are basically trying to champion the same. I hope that in this space, we all continue to acknowledge and realize that, we are stronger together, that we can cooperate. I mean, majorly, it's important that Black people, all people of African descent, begin to realize this, because in my estimation and in my view, honestly, I believe that this has been the biggest missing link, our Achilles heel, so to speak, as people of African descent, that we struggle a lot to just cooperate, And if we can start to understand what cooperation really means, we will really, we will really move the needle, and we will really achieve a lot. So yeah, it's great.
I love it. I love it, gentlemen. Yep. I mean, I definitely subscribe to both your views on Pan Africanism, and again, this particular forum that we have here today is just about empowering thinkers like yourselves, and then cementing these ideas, these solutions into the ecosystem of the world. And so, we can definitely start by jumping right into it. What's happening globally in the AI development? Do you say, where are we right now? What does that look like here in the United States, in the Western world, versus how does that look like on the continent back home? Because I think there's definitely a huge divide and a huge rift with where things are currently here and where things are back home. So do you have an insight for the audience on, just what that looks like currently?
Absolutely. Yeah, so in order to break down this topic, for sure, we have to understand what the neighbor is doing, right? And so we are witnessing an AI arms race. The US and China are pouring billions of dollars into building models that not only automate work, but also shape public opinions. We've seen it shape their healthcare systems. Like, for example, I'm here working in the healthcare system. Uh, AI just in the past 24 months has really ramped up, and the things that are happening, it's really incredible. We've seen it also shape the geopolitical landscape as well. So AI is becoming not only new infrastructure like the electricity or internet, but we are also witnessing it becoming a soft tool of power. And so whoever controls it controls influence at scale. And just to add something to it, the US leads with tech giants like Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, backed by massive R&D budgets. Try to think of it, about $76 billion was invested in 2024 in US AI startups alone, right?
Mm.
So that's just massive, and China is following closely, leveraging state-driven initiatives and vast data pools with companies like Baidu and Tencent pushing AI in surveillance and healthcare. We also see some aspect of AI coming from Europe. Europe is carving a niche for itself with ethical AI frameworks. Uh, we also see countries such as India and Singapore building regional hubs. So the race is fueled mainly, I noticed, by availability of data, the scale of it, the power of compute, talent, but it's also creating a divide in the sense that regions such as Africa with less infrastructure, we risk being left behind unless we act in a very strategic way.
Sure. It's interesting to say that you say that actually, and it brings something to mind. So if all this continents, basically, North America, Europe, China, if all these guys are investing as much as they are, right? Could we then argue that probably the bus has already left? Or as a Pan African, it's just looking at it, are we still on the bus? Have we boarded it yet, or just it already bolted? Like we are just at the bus stop, but the bus has left.
Now, that's a very interesting question, but I like being hopeful and very optimistic. I believe that solutions that address African problems are not yet on the market. That definitely gives us an avenue for us to actually come in and to build AI system that really address our problems. You see, for example, I know you are aware that the AI systems are not being built with our data, right?
Uh-huh.
And so, if you're not building the AI with our data, how can it produce solutions that actually answer to our problems? And so, I see definitely an opportunity. And to answer your question, the race across, maybe they are ahead, but the race forward, there's still a massive opportunity for us to leapfrog for sure.
And I love that conversation, guys. I think from looking at some of the data, some of the numbers you mentioned, to say Africa, in contrast, is only, I think, so far in 2025, we only spent about $2 to $3 billion investing in AI, which is completely insane. Like you said, America by itself is, invested what, 70 billion last year, and you best believe they invested probably double that this year.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so it's really unfortunate, quite honestly, when you think about it from an African perspective, and truly like a Black perspective. When you think about when Midjourney came out, for example, everybody was going crazy over Midjourney. I loved it too, but you would ask it to create like something, an image of a Black person, and it completely butchered it. Just again, the data that these things are fed, because they are not our large language models, they don't create Black data. They don't create like Black outputs, because they don't get fed Black inputs. And so I think it'll be very interesting if like a whole continent could actually just create its own LLM and be able to actually harness some of that data to see what those productions would be of that. So I think that's incredible. And so far, I would say that we are losing the race. We are definitely behind, but the plan is to leapfrog and move forward. And so my next question, I think, to both of you would be, and Dusa, I think you touched on it a little bit. AI is the new arms race. It is the new space race, for example. Like, pretty much technology is allowing us to go to space. Technology is allowing us to create vaccines. Technology is allowing us to be better financial institutions like Chase as well, where I work. I mean, LLM and AI has, just like you do say in healthcare, completely taken over the financial services. They're automating pretty much as many things as possible. And so with this thing being the new tool of dominance, how can Africa also get there? Like, what is like the first step for us to just start that journey? I know we're investing a little bit, but truly, how do we actually start competing with the global West?
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's definitely a great question. Um, so we have AI. So as I mentioned, AI is becoming more of a soft power. It's not necessarily brute forcing itself through the lives of people, but slowly by slowly encapsulating the decision, shaping opinions. Uh, a few years ago, you could easily tell a deepfake, right? Right now, it's becoming really, really hard. And so AI, it's the way I look at it, it's more of a double-edged sword, right? So empowering innovation on one end, but on the other side, as Kevin mentioned, uh, others are being left behind. And so it's giving the people who actually started early a very, very big advantage, right? So, for example, algorithm are writing narratives now, like for example, in hiring decisions, HR no longer reads hundreds and hundreds of resumes. Literally, AI is making those decisions right now. Uh, it's also reading through doctors' notes, uh, recommending which drugs and stuff like that. And so when they're trained on biased data and incomplete data, for example, and then applied to the African population like ours, there's an invisibility and misrepresentation that is bound to happen, right? And so to answer your question, I believe that Africa, we can use AI to leapfrog decades of
100%.
industrial disadvantages. AI offers Africa a chance to bypass traditional barriers and accelerate progress, just like we leapfrogged the landlines, for example, and went straight to mobile money. We can do the same with the AI. We don't need to build,
Absolutely.
uh, I believe, like legacy systems that we have here. We can create in an agile, AI powered, AI powered tools that solve problems at scale, from focuses such as precision agriculture to remote diagnostic of in healthcare. So I believe we can actually do it. We can achieve it for sure.
I love it. And Kevin, I'm so sorry. I just don't want to lose this thought. what Duce talked about M-Pesa, when we talked about the, like the mobile infrastructure, M-Pesa created a whole new way of how we interact with money. And that started in Africa, guys. Like that is not a thing. When you talk about Zelle, Cash App, all these things of how we transfer money instantly, those things started in Africa. And so Kenya specifically, all right? And from an economical perspective, Kevo, do you happen to understand like the impact of M-Pesa, like how much growth did it actually spur in Africa? Because you could do business anywhere on the continent, well, ultimately in Kenya initially, and you can pay somebody just instantly without actually having real cash on you. And so from an economical perspective, just an innovation like M-Pesa, do you have the impact of like how that actually uplifted the economy? And that is just one innovation. So we want multiple M-Pesas. But again, do you have the numbers for that and just kind of how that actually assisted with our economies?
For sure, Kuya, for sure. I mean, think about it this way. M-Pesa comes in about 2007, 2008. It's taking off, okay? At that point, if you go back and look at the numbers of how many Kenyans were actually had bank accounts, the number was a paltry amount, okay? Only people who, let's say, worked for government or private sector probably had bank accounts. The general majority of Kenyans did not have a bank account anywhere. So how would they be transacting? Remember, before that, there had been the wave, the plastic money wave, all right, in the West, and people had plastic money, and and they were able to, and they still have. So one of the reasons why M-Pesa was very successful for this demographic was that it really addressed a felt need. And what was that? People did not have bank accounts. It really improved the ability to transact in real time. And that was huge. So yes, talking of leapfrogging, that was a huge, huge step forward. We were able to just basically go from people not having bank accounts. Frankly, that kind of almost, made it kind of, unimportant to have one. And I mean, if you look at Kenya right now and generally in Africa, the fact that, I mean, there's been, whatever you call it, Dahab Shale, M-Pesa, they are now all over the place. And you do not still necessarily need to have, a brick and mortar account to be able to participate in the markets. That was huge. So to answer your question, indeed, M-Pesa was a game changer in every sense of the word. And again, I see the same similarities with AI right now. And there's something that, before I forget, that Duce had mentioned, bias and having inherent bias. The one thing that we have to remember as Black people, we talk about how marginalized we are, how discriminated upon we are. These are issues that won't just go away in a day. I mean, there are reasons for it, and we can talk about that another day. But the most important thing to understand is that these biases do exist. We do have biases as well as African people, as Black people. And when we build all these models, it is bound to have that inherent bias in it. And that is what now, as Black people, we are experiencing now. How do we bridge that? We have no other choice but to build our own models, because the models built in the West are being generalized on us. Why? One, no data to train them on us. So we need to build our own. That's going to be the starting point. And to that extent, then, how do we do that? And you say you could furnish more on this. Africa, in its totality, accounts for less than 1% of funding in AI. Now, if you are to drill down and try and see, okay, we have 54 countries on the continent, right? How much are these governments spending? If AI is this important and they are aware that this is the frontier, right? How much are they spending in AI? You won't even find that data. So we do have a long way to go. And I think platforms like this are important in kind of bringing, that awareness, so people can start talking about this and demanding that, more gets done.
Absolutely.
I love it. And I think actually, before we get to like the next segment, I'm curious what you guys think. Like, what sectors in Africa are ripe for disruption? And I think we've already touched on a few of these things. I think Duce mentioned like precision agriculture. I think that would be huge. I have this idea in my head of like a United States of Africa, where like the West, for example, the West. In Africa, West Africans, you have these folks who are very entrepreneurial. Actually, Kenya, Nigerians, very entrepreneurial in nature. You have very rich countries like the Congo with minerals. South Africa is also really good when it comes to education, so and then the northern part of Africa, rich in culture and also education, mathematics, closer to like the trade lines with Europe, for example. If you guys were to create an Africa strategically, how would you kind of like disrupt like the current norms? Assume it's just one country.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that maybe might have been the focus of the African Union when everything started. But of course, now the current African Union, because I don't know what they're doing, but
Nobody knows what they're doing.
but you know, to your point, what you've mentioned, we have many of the African countries that are rich in resources. So,
Yep.
we have African countries that are rich in talent in terms of technical prowess. We have countries that are really entrepreneurial in their
Inclined.
approaches. Some countries that are really focused on education and others focused on healthcare and agriculture.
Yep.
And these are definitely areas, these are sectors that we can really advance really quickly, but collaboration has to be key, right?
Yep.
So as long as there's the idea or the notion of I'm Ugandan, I'm Kenyan, it will be really, really hard to really create an infrastructure that connects us all. If we, like, we've been here for a couple of years, right, in the West, and whether you're in Boston or in Columbus, Ohio, you know, the very first description that someone gives you is that, oh, I'm American. I come from New York,
Yep.
But if you meet an African, the very first
I'm Kenyan.
description is, I'm Kenyan. I come from Africa. Like, it should be the other way. I'm African. Oh, I live in Kenya. And
Correct.
so those are some of the barriers. These are some of the legacies left to us by the colonial, infrastructure. And unfortunately, even after many years, we've not really been able to completely break away from and to see our brothers and our sisters as brothers and sisters, uh, as partners to work with instead of opponents to compete with.
I like
Well
that.
said.
I like that.
Well said.
And I like the question actually. It's one question that is always. I mean, this is at the very core of Pan Africanism. To be honest with you. So really, the question you're asking is a question of comparative advantage. It's a beautiful topic. It's one thing that economics love to talk about. In their beer sessions, I mean, definitely that will always come up. So, comparative advantages, you are focusing on what you're best at. And that's what we want to do. I mean, you're big. Okay, good. This is what you can do with that. Oh, you're entrepreneurial. Yes. Cool. I mean, how about you be at the frontier of business, figure out what we need and supply that to the market, That's very important. But at the core of that as well is infrastructure. And you did mention that. Infrastructure is key. I mean, yeah, to its credit, AU is thinking of, it's called, I think, AFCTA, Agenda 2060, I believe.
Yep, 63, which is
so
madness.
2063, correct. So, see, if we want to actualize that, then yes, we are surely in future going to start seeing ourselves as Africans. Why? Because I won't need to fly to Belgium so that I can go to Yaoundé in Cameroon. All right. If I need to go to Togo, I don't need to go through France. I can actually, if I want to do overlanding, which I love to do, I could just get in my vehicle and drive around Africa and do whatever I want to do. That's how it should be. But you know what's missing? Infrastructure. So for as long as we don't have infrastructure in place to make these things happen, they will not happen. But why are they not happening is the question, really. African business. I was reading recently, and African business was saying that in their research, they did some research, and according to their numbers, what Africa needs is to invest 100 billion year on year in infrastructure for us to even crack AI. Just think about that, 100 billion. But remember what I just said a few minutes ago, right? In 2024, we spent what, 108 million. So what is
Million.
that difference? So think about
A
how much
lot.
we need to work. I mean, we have a lot of work, ahead of us if we are going to make this dream come true, and we absolutely can. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not that Africa is incapable of raising 100 billion. Oh, come on. I mean, think about all the resources we have. I mean, there's the one that people know, right? I mean, rare earth metals, Congo, coltan. I mean, all these countries, iron. You name what one mineral that Africa doesn't have. Just one.
It's impossible.
There's none. Like we have it all. So why is it that it's impossible to spend 100 billion a year to make this happen?
It's
That's the
a it's
question.
an age-old question. Yes,
That's
an
a very good
age.
question.
Well, I think we want to make those changes, and I think this conversation spark a lot of those things. I think we actually have segued quite nicely into like the barriers that we must break. We've touched on the infrastructure piece, which infrastructure is a large word, but I think the audience understands what we're discussing here. It's not just roads and railways, but it is the institutions that allow us to actually create this, the R&D institutions, creating places where our brains, our young people can actually go and learn these things, creating systems in which we can create cheap electronic tools, devices, cheap internet. These things need to be there so that our people can actually be able to move forward. But the colonial legacies have definitely had us for quite a long time, and they've created a lot of those divisions, which Douceur was talking about as well. I mean, without those, Africa was essentially a free trade zone within Africa. We were trading with each other. We would migrate from the north all the way to the south without too much difficulty in the past. But once we got this interferences from external parties, we're still reeling from that. And so I think the unity which Douceur talked about as well, and even my brother says it nicely, like when we need to create a new mind shift. When somebody asks you, where are you from? You should be like, hey, I'm African. I just so happen to have been born in Kenya, and so I'm proudly African. I think that is one way to actually start looking at the unity together, and then that is going to bring more people into that fold as well. And so we can jump into what building our future looks like. What does an African AI ecosystem even look like? Like I struggle to see that right now. Like I've been removed from the continent a little bit now, but I just struggle to see, like, I'm familiar with how the infrastructure here works, from financial services to healthcare to transportation. I can see that because I'm here. I have a trucking company. I work in health. I've worked in healthcare. I've worked in financial services. I've interacted with just the government itself when it comes to getting things like your social security, immigration. But how can we actually create ecosystems through AI to make these things more efficient? And this is just an open-ended question to both you guys.
Yeah, definitely a great question. So the AI ecosystem, to me, it looks like data centers being built on the continent, right? We have
Like
data
that.
centers in the US, we have data centers in India, in China. Uh, I'm not necessarily aware of major data centers, uh, on the continent. I know there's a few in Kenya, a few in Nigeria and South Africa, but we don't necessarily have the heavy hitting weight of data on the continent, right? The ecosystem looks to me building those data centers with sustainability in mind. It looks like universities producing AI talent who stay to build local solutions. It looks like a network of homegrown talent that have their own data sovereignty and infrastructure that prioritizes African needs. Uh, it looks like governance, for example, that focuses on startups and co-creating tools that serve real needs and not vanity metrics to be published in the African Business Journal. You know, so for me, when I'm thinking of an AI infrastructure, and I believe this is a term that will keep on coming to during this conversation, is the unity between the talent that we have, the unity between the governance that we have, the policies, how are we thinking about our problems, how are we thinking about our issues, and really stop over reliance on importing solutions from outside. Uh, Basically grounding ourselves in the African values, Ubuntu, resilience and community. That's what I envision the AI ecosystem for Africa would look like.
I love what you just said there. They say, Ubuntu, resilience. These are things that are completely African. These are things that are completely Black. Look around you. We are that, but again, due to lack of sovereignty, as you rightly mentioned. I mean, even if you think about all these data centers all across the continent, you realize that we don't own them. It's Facebook, it's all these foreign Western companies. So we do need to, get our feet wet. We do need to put in our work. And how do we do that? I mean, Kuya, you had just mentioned something about, like what the biggest blockers are to embracing AI. And the way I look at it, obviously, is, you cannot do anything without proper institutions. Again, I know. I will say that until I die. But institutions are key. And what do I mean by that? All these governments on the continent, the political class needs to appreciate what this frontier that we're talking about is, what this AI frontier is. And once that is appreciated, even at the AU level, then we can begin to see that needle moving. Because again, I think in 2022, IFC and Project were saying that, according to their research, 80% of funding for startups on the continent was from outside the continent. So if all this funding is from outside the continent, how will their goals mirror yours? I mean, they have their own shareholders, and like we have to think about those things. So investment is key here, and we really have to get serious, really serious about investing in AI and in the systems that will, make us actually leapfrog and gain an advantage in our own right as we deserve.
Those are excellent points, gentlemen. I think when it comes to Ubuntu, I mean, I definitely urge our viewers and listeners to just Google the term Ubuntu. It is truly quite an interesting term. I think it's a South African term, and part of it is it's just about like the humanity aspect of things, right? Like I think one of the quotes I read was I am because we are. So it is a thing to do with humanity. And so to Douceur's point, to all Black folks out there, and again, it's not simply an exclusive club. This is an inclusive club. It's not just about Black people. But the reality of the matter is, Black people have been left behind for so long. And that's why we're advocating for some of this Black excellence, some of this Black investment. We have so much power within us to be able to move forward in life. We don't want to take over the world. We don't have a desire for that. We want to simply be at the table for everything. When we have these meetings, in New York for the General Assembly, for example, African leaders, when they speak, it is completely empty. I've seen PLO talk about this particular issue. Nobody cares about what African leaders have to say, just because we are not seen as equals. And so we have to use all the tools at our disposal to get on that table where we can be taken completely seriously. And I tell folks, when I was born in the 90s, dating myself, I'm still a young buck. China was a third world country. Third world country, guys. Right now China is de facto number 2 behind the United States. So it's not like we cannot do this thing. And that's why for me, the African Union Vision 2063 is completely maniacal to me. Like, why do we need 40 years to just get somewhere? Like, we need to be moving completely in a rapid pace. So AI, for example, and at the top of the call, Dusa, you mentioned this. Year over year, the advancement in technology with AI, it just completely, it's like, yeah, it just magnifies. It just goes quicker and quicker. So like, why do we need 40 years to kind of catch up. We have all these things right now. We have a very young demographic on the continent, and people are hungry, they're thirsty, they want to get ahead. So, if we create the infrastructure that Kev was talking about and empower them with the tools that Douceur is talking about and the mindset that I'm talking about, we can move mountains very, very quickly. So it is actually leads to my next question. How do we build tools that serve us? Douceur, you touched on it a little bit. You touched on the data. We need that data. We don't want it just to mimic the West. I think, again, China is a great example. China creates things that are similar to the West, but they're of Chinese influence. They allowed Tesla to come in there and made it very easy for Tesla to come and build electric cars in China. But right now, the biggest electric car manufacturer is BYD from China. And so I don't understand why we cannot use the blueprints that are already out there to create things that are authentically African. For example, this podcast, it's not it's not a new idea. It's just an idea that some other people have been doing it, but no one is doing it the way we're doing it, right? And so how do we build our tools to serve us? How can we make those tools uniquely African to say besides just the data itself?
That's actually a very good question, and this actually leads into maybe the strategic view that the continent should necessarily have. The very first thing I'll say, let's start with the problem. The tech will come later. Because sometimes we might obsessed with the tech, and we end up not solving the problems. Let's have a very intimate understanding of our problems. Let's really understand um, what the solution would look like answering this problem. Because I feel that sometimes we try to be very innovative without really understanding the problem, and you have a solution that serves nothing. It improves no one's life, it changes no one's mind. And so just having that intimate relationship with the understanding of the problem can really help us to build solutions that are very, very specific. So that's where I believe we should start. That's the very first tool that we need to have. The other thing is, apart from just understanding the problems, we have to understand which areas do they affect, right? So what keeps our farmers up at night? What gaps do our clinics face? So instead of just copy pasting Silicon Valley, we need to really tailor our solutions to our people. And so we build from the soil up, so these should be tools that reflect our context, our languages. As Kuya, you mentioned at the beginning, we had when we first started, you had facial recognition tools that couldn't identify skin tones that were much darker.
Even Google, when they rolled out their Google Photos, yeah, that was a huge issue.
And the problem necessarily, so the impact was bigger, but the problem was simple. We were not in the data. See,
simple.
And so let's build with our context in mind, our languages in mind. I was trying to test, for example, some various LLMs and testing them with African dialect. And thank God I speak 6 languages, so I can tell when something is wrong when I see the output. And so just being able to put our language there, language is really powerful in the sense that you are literally inviting more people to the table. If you write a book in English, imagine now translating it in Swahili, translating it in Kikuyu or whatever. Now you have a global people who can actually read and look at the resources and actually be able to get the knowledge and use it. And so language being in the LLMs, our context, our culture, I think that's where real innovation starts.
Amazing. I couldn't agree more with you, Douceur and Kuya, because one thing I'd say again is that when you are building based on need, there's no way you can go wrong. All right. And I know we touched on this before, Kuya. Like when you have a Western company supposedly discovering, eco-friendly way of building using mud, okay, and we've been doing this for millennia.
Millennia.
It's crazy.
Yep.
But you see, that's the reality. Why? Because you have never been included in that model. So the question of how do we do this? How did China do it? Really, just look inward. Forget about the world. Just look inward and try to solve your own problems, as to say, put it very rightly. Look at what your needs are. What are your demands? What is the felt need? What are you really trying to achieve? Why was M-Pesa very successful? It really hit home because it was solving a specific problem that needed a solution. So that's just what we need. We just need to forget about everything else, because the challenge that startups have, tech startups as well, is we look at what's going on around the globe, and like, okay, I can like copy paste and try that over here and that will work. Fine, maybe, but situations are different. So just focus on what your environment, what the challenges are in your environment, and seek to solve those through AI. That'll be the start. And I don't see how we would fail when we go that route. And again, I would emphasize cooperating. I mean, we have a competitive advantage, right? I mean, if you look across the continent, I mean, we are all blessed differently, so to speak. We should just leverage that and use that, and we will definitely get there, for as long as we are serious about that.
Agreed. And I think honestly, if Africa was to be very selfish and close her borders to the world, we would be just fine. Like we're literally one continent that we can literally survive without external trade. If we were just to close off our borders completely, we would be completely just fine. We would not need anything. We can build pretty much everything we need in Africa. And the people who would suffer the most are the world, not Africa. Now, jumping into our last segment here, just a call to action. Why must Gen Zs and millennials in Africa engage with AI now? Just to give us some context of why we're focusing on Gen Zs and millennials, not only because we are millennials, we are the future, we are now. The Gen Z population is truly the population that's going to take us into the future. On average, the median age of folks on the continent is 19.7 years, guys. I mean, that these are teenagers. Like that's the median age of the continent. And in sub-Saharan Africa, it's even lower, 18 years, 0.6. Now, look at Europe. 44 years is the average age. North America, 39 years is the average age. So what does this mean? So over 60% of Africa's population is under 25, which is magnificent. This is the population that can jump into AI, new technologies, and completely learn them and reinvent them into something completely new. By 2050, Africa will be home to more than a third of the world's youth. That's just crazy. So this is both a demographic dividend and a potential crisis if education, jobs, and leadership does not rise to meet the challenge. And you can see this happening right now in Kenya with all this maandamano, this protest going on right now. So the youth are hungry. They know that they want better. And for us, as the millennials, we're not yet there, but we're trying to get there. Traore is a millennial. He's a president. If we get into power, I believe that we can truly change the lives of not only our generation, will make the lives of the older generation better, because those folks are getting older. They need to be taken care of. We can show the younger generations, the Gen Zs, that this is how things should be. And so it's quite a unique time right now to be our age, quite honestly. And so again, the question is, why must the Gen Zs and millennials of Africa engage with AI right now?
Yeah. I really love how you tailored it question. It's really interesting how every question is just hitting home for me. Uh, uh, One thing we have to understand, AI won't slow down.
Yep.
And right now, AI is writing the rules for the future. And if we're not on the table, then we're on the menu. So the Gen Z and the millennials, I believe, they are digital natives. And so with the vision and the urgency to shape systems, You know, that should be our focus, not just to use them. And so this is our moment to move from being consumers to being creators. I believe the Gen Zs and millennials, who, as you've said, make up more than 60% of Africa's population, must really engage with AI to shape the continent's future. AI is transforming industries globally. We've witnessed it, how it's happening here in the country. And so the effect and the impact of AI, we cannot diminish it, you know? And so we have to actively participate. And so this is not only for the video, for the pod, this is an outcry to anyone who would be watching that AI is writing the rules of the future. And if your voice is not in it, those rules may not consider you. So we really, really have to uh, get onto, I can say, I don't want to call it a bandwagon, but I'd say this tool of movement, forward movement, and really understand it, really master it. Because we can, you know, and so definitely get ahead of this. It's writing the rules. We need our voices to be heard in those rules.
Indeed.
Definitely.
Um, I would say this. If you're Gen Z, if you're millennial, the fact is that, this is your time. If you don't get on AI, you will lose. And again, you will never have the advantage to leapfrog and be able to catch up in a way, because we know that we've been dealt a very unfair hand by history. Remember, your forefathers, your grandfathers, your great grandfathers, your great grandfathers, your fathers have been fighting all along, and they've never been able to achieve much. But here we are with a chance to actually bridge that gap. So now, if you don't take that opportunity and advantage to actually do the work and get ahead for yourself and your family and your lineage, then you will lose, and it's going to be a vicious cycle. Remember, most of us grew up being told about colonialism and how that happened, and and slavery, right? And so, what are we going to do about it now? This is what you're going to do about it. This is the opportunity to do actual something, something that tips the scales in your favor. This is the time. It's your time.
Absolutely, and I mean, I'll throw it out to our listeners. Hopefully, we're targeting some of these young audiences as well. I think we are actually. Douceur and I are passionate about anime, guys. Like, I mean, you have no idea. However, there's literally, and Master D, correct me if I'm wrong. Are you familiar with any animation studio in Africa?
None.
None. Now, the Japanese, the Chinese, the South Koreans, they're investing like $1 million an episode on animations. But do you know what they do? They are creating and preserving their histories through stories. When
That's
I
right.
watch Naruto, for example, I know what ninjutsu means. I'm not even Japanese, but I'm so in love with their culture that I want to go to Japan. Africa does not do a good job of creating these types of stories, but we do have an opportunity now to actually create short form of stories through AI. You can create a short little video with CGI now, and it's gonna be pretty cool. So we don't have to do like that high level animation or like that expensive animation. Sorry, we can do high level work with the tools that we have right now, and so we need to be completely creative, innovative, and how we actually export our talent. I would love to have like an African studio of anime just to see the histories of Africa, even pre-colonial times, before our brothers and sisters were taken away for slavery. It would be so cool to see like my grandfather and his great grandfather going to war against the colonizers, in Africa. My grandfather was killed fighting the white man. And so these things would be so cool to see them animated, and that's the storytelling aspect of it. Put our books into motion. We love like the Black Panthers of the world, the Lion Kings of the world. We are those people. We need to be telling our stories, and we have that level of creativity. We're just not able to put it on screen right now. And so I think I challenge the youth to actually take this thing by the horns and, start creating all these amazing things for us. And so to bring it home, today's conversation with Douceur was just about, algorithms, data, and artificial intelligence. It's about the possibility, about what happens when African minds are not just consumers of technology, but creators of it. If there's one message to walk away with, AI is not just about technology, it's about freedom, truly freedom. Freedom to build, freedom to solve our problems with our own tools, and freedom to write our own story. So don't be intimidated, get curious, explore, and experiment. Whether you're a student, an entrepreneur, or just somebody with a dream, AI is here and it is accessible. If you feel this episode, send it to somebody who needs to hear that Africa does not need permission to get to innovate. Again, subscribe to the channel and, let us know what you guys want us to talk about next. But I feel like this has been a great episode, and I cannot thank my guest, Douceur, now for taking time out of your day, and Kevo as well for your very unique perspective. Until next time, guys, stay unshaken, stay grounded, and stay building the Africa and the world that we deserve. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Ah.